I received a message from a student today who had been caught in a sudden set of circumstances where she ended up telling a lie. And she was wondering if there might be some leniency for lay people who live a more difficult life than those of us who live in the monastery. Leniency, I guess, in the sense of not being punished for the break of the precept. Well, the precept is not a question of punishment or of a judge who does or doesn't grant leniency. Precepts are training rules. You're supposed to learn from them, and the more strictly you hold to them, the more you learn. This is part of the Buddha's general teachings on how to get to know your mind at the same time that you're developing good qualities in the mind. And those two things go together. Because if you act on intentions that you know are unskillful, you're putting up a resistance. You're putting up a wall, saying at that point the Buddha doesn't matter. The teachings of the Ajahns and all the effort they went to reestablish the Dhamma, they don't matter. When you have that kind of wall in your mind, you're not going to learn anything. It's when you act on impulses that are skillful that the mind is a lot more open to itself. So you find that you're training both the heart and the mind at the same time. You're training the heart in the desire to be harmless, and the mind in the desire to know itself. Remember, of course, that the Pali word citta means both heart and mind. And if you're going to train one side of it, you've got to train the other side. Otherwise, it's like exercising your body, exercising only the right side but not the left side. You get out of balance. When you exercise both sides, then things are in balance and you can get strong. And your strength doesn't become a burden or an actual hindrance. So what do you learn? Well, one thing you learn about being mindful. You have to keep the precept in mind, and you have to be alert, because things are going to come up fast, both inside and outside. I find this particularly in the case of what the student was talking about today. It was by telling a lie, she saved herself a lot of inconvenience. That means your convenience is more important than the precept. Is that really your sense of values? If it is, well, you learned about it. But then you've got to say, okay, this is something that's getting in the way, I've got to do something about it. Or sometimes you lie out of the desire to please, to be friendly, to not make waves. Okay, which is more important? Holding to the precept, realizing that in the long run it's going to be better to tell the truth, or just going for the quick fix. You're learning a set of values that underlies the third quality, which is ardency. Remember that when Ajahn Lee was describing these three qualities of mindfulness, alertness, and ardency, ardency for him was the insight factor of the three. This is different from what you get in the commentary. The commentary defines the word sampajanya, that we define as alertness, as clear comprehension, understanding things in terms of the three characteristics. Now you find this not at all in the canon. Every time the canon talks about alertness, sampajanya, it's knowing what you're doing while you're doing it. So the commentary says, well, everybody knows what they're doing while they're doing it. Even jackals know that they're howling when they howl. Babies know they're sucking on their mother's breast when they're sucking on their mother's breast. But do they really know? Their minds are off someplace else. To be alert, you have to be really on top of what you're doing, clear about what you're doing. Now you begin to see, as you're ardent in trying to do things well, you begin to see more clearly what gets in the way. But not especially ardent. Things can get in the way and it seems okay. Ardency has the value judgment that you really do want to hold by the precepts and you really do want to learn the lessons they have to teach. You begin to understand layers and layers in the mind. Because after all, the precepts, how do you break a precept? You would do it intentionally. How clear are you about your intentions? Most people are not clear at all. You ask them, why did you do that? And they have to think for a minute. If you're really on top of your intentions, you wouldn't have to pause. That's because you begin to realize that there are many layers in your intentions, some of which are skillful, some of which are not. And you're not going to see them if you keep breaking the precepts. You will see them if you try not to. That's when you begin to realize that teaching the Buddha had about where craving is located, which is basically the same as where is the allure of these things that would pull you away. What do you like about them? And as the texts say, they could be anywhere. They could be in a perception. They could be in a thought construct. And you read about that and you get overwhelmed by the fact that they could be anywhere. But the Buddha's not describing things to overwhelm you. He's giving you leads. Follow this lead and see where it takes you. Look at your perceptions. Look at your perception of a situation. Look at the narratives you tell yourself about a situation, especially the ones that would say, I don't have to observe the precept here, or the precepts don't apply here. What's in that narrative that has its pull? Or in the desire to please, or in the desire for convenience. Exactly where is that craving located? Where is the allure located? If you try to thwart these things, that's when you know them. The Buddha gives an example of, or gives the analogy of a dam. You put a dam across the river and it holds things back. It doesn't just hold things back. In the course of putting the dam across the river, you learn a lot about the currents that flow beneath the surface. So remember, these precepts are called training rules for a good reason. You train the mind so you get to know it. The more you train the mind in the precepts, the more open it is with itself. The fact that you're able to stick with the precepts makes you more willing to open up, look inside, with the confidence that you can do something about what you find inside if you run into things you don't like to see about yourself. That's a large part of the practice right there. Seeing things you don't like about yourself, but not having to identify with them, identify with the precepts. We had a sense of self around the precepts for the time being at least. So you can undo your sense of self. You'll be willing to break the precepts. This too teaches you a lesson that your sense of self is fluid. And it can be tricky because it's fluid, because you find yourself identifying with things that you wouldn't expect sometimes. It seeps into your perception, seeps into your thought constructs. It seeps into your inner conversations. You can make it seep in a good way. Just because you've been a certain kind of person for who knows how long doesn't mean you can have to continue being that kind of person. After all, the Buddha said, if people couldn't learn how to develop skillful qualities and abandon unskillful ones, there'd be no point in his teaching. It's because we can do this. That's why he taught. So he has confidence in you, that you can change your ways. And you find that you are able to live with yourself more and more, and be open to yourself more and more, the more you hold by the precepts. There's a tendency sometimes to divide practice of Buddhism into two areas. One is the area of making merit, and the other is the practice leading to Nibbana. Making merit is considered to be a lowly practice. Of course, it's better than not making merit. But it's not divorced from the practice leading to Nibbana. After all, you make merit for a good life in future lifetimes. Part of that is holding to the precepts. And as we chanted just now in the practice of the Noble Eightfold Path, run into the precepts again. The difference simply is in how you use them. If you use them for training the mind, so it can get to understand it, understand itself, you're actually doing both practices at once. It's simply a matter of how refined you are in the lessons you learn, how observant you are. This is one of the reasons why we practice meditation, mindfulness, concentration. That practice builds on the precepts, but also turns around. It helps us to be even more strict with ourselves in the precepts. After all, the Dhamma has as one of its rewards the fact that your precepts now become pleasing to the noble ones. In other words, you hold to them continually in a way that's conducive to concentration. So there's a lot to learn by observing the precepts, this quest to always choose the right thing, this most skillful thing to do and say and think. So see them as an opportunity to come to know yourself and to be open to yourself. The mind is open to the heart is open to the mind. And both sides grow.